rather than a private member's bill.
My Lords, being the last, I think, backbench speaker in this debate presents certain challenges in terms of finding something novel to say. So I thought I'd begin by giving you a view of your Lordship's House from somebody who is a relatively recent arrival, who still has, if I can put this without being offensive, 1 foot in the real world, just about. And in the outside world. But who has developed, I hope, a degree of affection for the House over the last year that I've been here. And I've got two contradictory observations as I listen to your Lordship on many occasions over the last year when I've listened but not participated in debates that are essentially internal debates about organisation of the House and its composition and so forth. The first is that your Lordships are rightly very proud of the very good work that is undertaken in this House. The work that is undertaken to improve legislation, which I've seen myself, and the work that is done by select committees, just to mention two examples of the justified pride that your Lordships take in the work that you do. And at the same time, I notice that there is this periodic tendency to beat yourselves up about two issues in particular, which is the number of peers in the House and the composition, that is principally to do with the hereditary peers who are sitting here. And it's undoubtedly the case, in my view, that the latter gets in the way of or is in some sense the cause of your frustration, that the outside world is not giving proper recognition to the very good work that you do. So I have a few words of assurance for you, which is that outside this House, nobody cares about the question how many members this House has. Nobody cares about the composition and the role of hereditary peers. There has been a by-election in Bexley and Old Sidcup over the last few weeks. I congratulate the new Member of Parliament. There's another by-election taking place in Shropshire at the moment. I am absolutely certain that of all the politicians from this House and others who have traipsed to those places in recent weeks and will continue doing so, if they were asked how many people on the doorstep voluntarily raised the question of the composition or the numbers of this House, or even had a view on it if pressed, the answer would be negligible. As my noble friend...
Say a word. I understand the point. The public aren't terrifically aware of the composition of the House and so on. But the journalists are, and they are ruthless about this House. They ignore us. They are rude about us. That is the reality. And
they influence the wider public.
Yeah. They influence the wider public, but they also influence MPs and Parliament. It makes it very difficult for this House, I think, to be as effective as we should be, bearing in mind the quality of the people in the House of Lords.
My Lords, I really don't think that we are to be driven by a very small number of journalists who have a particular view on the topic which the public does not share. If we are accountable to anybody, we are accountable to the public for whom we legislate. We don't legislate for journalists. We contribute to legislating for members of the public, and they don't have a particularly strong view. And one of the reasons for that is that the hereditary principle is embedded in our Constitution. And the monarchy is a popular feature of our Constitution. And although the noble Lord Grocott will no doubt, whom I've always found in our work together on a select committee, the Built Environment Select Committee, to be extremely courteous and indeed, I would say, mildly conservative in his personal habits and conduct, although he would no doubt want to make a radical dissociation between his views of the hereditary peers who sit in this House, not personally but as a concept, and the monarchy. The two are related, and people do understand that there is an element of traditional authority in the way in which this country is run that people accept more easily and more comfortably than they do new and innovative constitutional concepts. But even assuming that we were ridiculous in the minds of a small number of journalists and that really mattered, I don't understand why we would be less ridiculous if this bill were to pass. The majority, not all, but the majority of members of this House who are not hereditary peers are here because of political appointment or because they have achieved a degree of eminence in the military or armed services or in their professions. All credit to those. I'm not knocking life peers, of which of course I'm one myself, any more than I am hereditary peers. But what is the rational basis? What is the logic of that as a principle of composition of the House of Lords? So my very strong view, and I do note that this bill provokes a great deal of excitement. I even heard the noble Baroness Lady Meacher actually advocating that as a House we should contrive to find a way to break the law, not simply to go back on an agreement, but to break the existing law by finding devices by which we could subvert our legal obligation to hold these by-elections in order to force a change in the law. I mean, that is a degree of radicalism that clearly shows how strongly people feel about it. But the fact is that this is a damaging and dangerous measure. There are other measures that could well be followed, more modest. Amending the succession rules of peerages to include female and male heirs, widening the electorate for hereditary peers, replacement hereditary peers to include the whole House. Those things would be genuinely incremental changes. This is a radical change, and I entirely support the government in thinking that radical change of that character should not be undertaken piecemeal, but should await a comprehensive proposal, which may indeed include an elected House, and I would be perfectly happy with that, but not on this basis that Lord Grocott knows, the noble Lord, I fear, knows is much more radical than he presents it in his modest way.
My Lord, I withdrew my name from this debate yesterday because I was told